an incredible honor to do the North American premiere of IMPURE on Menstrual Hygiene Day here in this venue at UN Plaza at UNICEF House, right next to the UN Headquarters at the heart of international diplomacy.
I think we need to change the conversation, period. Stop the stigma. Absolutely. We need to understand that girls and women make up 1/2 of our population. Until we can fully embrace humans in their whole self, from menarche through menstruation to menopause, we're not serving the world. Think of how much potential we're losing when we don't recognize the full humanity of half of our humanity. So I'm super proud to be here today to support IMPURE. It's a beautiful film and glad to be here on MH Day.
My expectations are high because this should be a high policy agenda for every government, every school management committee, every teacher, every parent, every community member.
I feel like when we discuss these issues, especially the realities of so many people, it is the stories that make it such a reality for all of us. So I'm excited, but also very interested to see the story that they'll tell.
Once in a while, it's good that we use our abilities and platforms to also tell overlooked stories and to highlight overlooked issues, like period stigma. It's just not as mainstream as it should be, but we are getting there. The movement is there. That's good, and it's good that also we as filmmakers, we are contributing to this movement. But the movement is growing. It's a very young movement. I think 10 or 15 years ago, we haven't seen this topic in the spotlight, but it's going into the limelight more and more.
Why are we not urging policymakers, supply distributors to make these free and accessible in every school? We don't need huge corporations to be making a profit of this. Women and girls groups the world over are able to do this at scale at affordable prices in a design that girls and women say, this works for us.
Well, the first thing we need to do is listen to girls, and this is a top priority for girls. Everywhere that we work, UNICEF is active in over 190 countries. Girls tell us to please help them access period supplies, make the topic less shameful, to break the stigma and taboo, and help girls be able to access education and hygiene facilities.
We know that programs that are really low cost, whether it be in somewhere like Nepal or Indonesia, where I was previously working, it is possible to work even on comic books, dialogues in communities, engagement with religious leaders, parents about what is menstruation, what the girls' rights are in this regard, how boys can support, how families can support, and change knowledge and attitudes and perceptions to really break the stigma. Make a dent in those numbers. From 10 million girls not accessing school because of a lack of supplies, but also shame and stigma, we can change that. We can get that number down to 0.
The second one is, in order to really listen to girls, we need to make this a policy imperative. Every government needs to be making menstrual health and hygiene supplies more affordable, free ideally in every school. We need to influence the supply chain so that women and girls are the ones designing these supplies and putting them front and center of procurement, design, and distribution. And of course, we need to make sure that communities are making this topic one that is part of everyday conversation, because menstruation is a girl's right.
How can we make this a topic that we talk about today and every day? Is there somebody that we can go home to and talk about our period experience, what we learned, who did we learn it from, to really break the silence around this? It is a policy imperative. It is every girl's right, and it's something that we can do low cost, at scale, and with impact. Special thank you to our amazing filmmaker. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much.
I also want to greet my amazing casting crew in Kenya and also the post-production crew in Germany. You are all amazing. I don't want to mention special names, maybe Ignacio Hennigs, the cinematographer and co-producer, and of course most of all Eunice Rura for her incredibly portrayal of June. lending her face actually to represent millions of other girls.
It's now my pleasure to, before we move to the real movie, it's my pleasure to introduce a video from our friends at WASH United. And that is Ina, who is the international coordinator of the Menstrual Hygiene Days. So those who are bringing us all together every 28th of May to celebrate menstrual health. Can we have the video? There we go.
Hello and happy Menstrual Hygiene Day. Great that you're all here to watch IMPURE, a wonderful movie that touches the heart and mind of so many people around the world. Many thanks to the organizations who set this screening up on the occasion of Menstrual Hygiene Day. You are all part of the movement that brings together more than 1,200 partner organizations, media, influencers, politicians, and tens of thousands of individuals to help create a period-friendly world. A period-friendly world is a world where menstruating girls are no longer ashamed or stigmatized because they have their period, such as June in the movies, where all women and girls are no longer kept from going to school, work, sports, or attending the movies simply because they are menstruating.
Without further ado, it is really my privilege to introduce to you the reason why we are all here this afternoon. A film written and directed by the incredibly talented Rico Herre with us tonight here. And it's my pleasure to present to you IMPURE.
June, uko sawa kweli?
Sijui kumetendeka nini.
This movie is so important because it really puts you in the shoes of June, and I think a lot of people don't know what the realities are of struggling with menstrual health, period poverty in so many different regions. We don't know what menstruation is from such a young age, and especially me, I didn't know what it was from a very young age. So I think a lot of the issues stem from the fact that communication is not in the different areas that we need it to be, and we need to talk more about it.
My experience with period poverty and stigma started in the village, where we grew up in an environment where even when you get your first period, you can't really tell anyone, you figure it out yourself. But what really touched my heart was when I was about 14 years old, there was a girl who had grown up within the village. I'd since moved. She lived next door to us. And I found out that she started using newspapers when it was that time of the month just so she could go to school. Eventually, like after a while, she just gave up. Because sometimes we speak about economic and educational empowerment, we expect people to go to schools. But the barriers that young girls have to face, especially where period poverty is concerned, makes them miss school, makes life very difficult, but also affects their sexual and reproductive health. So the stigma is around the silence around it, the shame around it, but not also acknowledging the barriers that period poverty actually causes in terms of the success and educational success specifically of these young women and girls.
The fact that we had the film on menstrual hygiene and the theme IMPURE, I love it because even me, when I'm menstruating, I feel I'm not pure. And not that I feel, but society makes us feel, because in some parts of our societies, in our communities, if a woman is menstruating, she cannot even cook in her home. She cannot touch food. And in some places, she's actually excluded. She has to stay behind and not before everybody. And there are some communities, there are some rivers girls cannot even cross. So the fact that the title itself is IMPURE, and then within the conversation of the film, we saw that, no, you are pure. So I think it's something that is going to live with me. It's something that is good for me.
Unapaswa kuwa makini. Hii sare linunua gali mno. Itunze sije kazeeka haraka.
Nitaitunza mama.
Una matatizo gani?
Nahisi tumbo laniuma kwa mbali.
I can relate with June. The mother did not take her through it before until after. And that was my story too, because I did not get the pre-education, but I had post-education.
Even when you see the film, communication is such a big theme that I was able to take away, because if June had actually known more about what her period was, how it would come to her, and what she would have to do in the face of that, it could have been so much more easier and so much could have been more prevented if she actually knew what she was expecting.
Can you sit down?
I go to the toilet.
Of course. I'll go to the toilet.
Too late.
Quiet. June. Can you please leave the room? Can you keep quiet? Stop laughing.
Everybody in the class had to laugh. Either they did not understand or because she stood alone in that situation. It's a very good film which needs to be premiered everywhere for us to see so that we can relate. And I think I'll watch it again and again because it gives me a lot of things to think about.
You are dirty. And when you are dirty, you should go home and clean yourself. Tafadhali.
Can you hear that? This silence among us. Why have we been silent for so long? Is it out of disinterest, ignorance, shame?
I also want to give a huge thank you to all the organizers, UNICEF, UNFPA, Real Relief, Trine, and Melissa, and the PAD Project. Thank you so much for co-sponsoring and also supporting. Melissa Burton, she won the Oscar for Period End of Sentence, which brought this topic on the map through filmmaking, through storytelling. And this is a good example of how filmmakers can support each other, you know. So Menstrual Hygiene Day was also a huge thing for her and the PAD Project. But yeah, kudos to her that she decided to come to New York, from LA to New York, to support this premiere event.
This story about the girl in Kenya who had committed suicide after being period shamed was a story that came out when our film, Period End of Sentence, was making the rounds, and we were all so devastated. And so when this film came out, so excited to uplift this story, to stop the stigma, to understand why and how period shaming affects young girls and why it should never be that way. So I'm very grateful to Rico, to the team, for bringing out this story. More stories like this need to be heard.
It's so interesting, isn't it, that none of us would be here were it not for the menstrual cycle, which is part of the reproductive cycle. We wouldn't be here, and yet this movement for menstrual equity and menstrual justice is really in its infancy.
I think in the United States, we are very privileged. Even when we have our periods, we can take the day off, we can go get chocolate at the store. But in so many underserved regions, that is not the case at all. There are so many people struggling to get period products, or even struggling to know the realities of what periods actually are.
June's story, as I was watching it, I found myself like getting very scared. How does it end? How does it end? The shame that she carries, but also remembering the first time you got your first period, how scared you were, but how you had a safe space to actually speak to someone.
When I got my first period, I genuinely was like, oh my God, I think I'm dying. It was exactly like what June was experiencing.
I've realized that there's a lot of shame and silence around it, which is why it's so difficult for young girls to ask questions. A lot of them don't even have good menstrual hygiene, and that's because they can't ask questions or ask for the right product. Sometimes they don't even have access to it. But the conversations make us realize how this is a broader problem that affects so many other facets.
We have a lot of work to do on social norms, right? So the behaviors and the acceptance and just talking about menstrual hygiene, health and hygiene in countries is so important. And so this is where we have big partnerships with the education sector to make sure that menstrual health and hygiene are in education curricula, but also to engage, the broader society in this discussion, because I think, as we've rightly said, it's not a women's issue, it's everyone's issue. And how do we get people talking about it?
Binyankwe, how can I help you? Kumbe ni wewe. June ukoje? Tumempeza sana leo. Kwani hajafika hapa?
The parts that impacted me the most were the relationship between the school and the home. And the film itself, I could relate because I have school projects. Part of my organization's work is on girls empowerment program. Within it, we do Voice for Change. And within it, we do sexual violence and education on menstrual hygiene. So when I saw this film, I could relate.
I think this film should be seen in particularly Bangladesh. I'm from Bangladesh, and in Bangladesh, periods are so stigmatized, genuinely, because that's where my parents immigrated from. And even when I go back to Bangladesh, people do not talk about periods. And when I visit there, it's almost like you can't talk about your periods, you can't talk about it in front of guys especially, and it's something that you need to hide.
As I was watching, the first time I went to do research on this issue was in Tanzania in 2006. And I was thinking, Rico, as I was watching your film, all these years we've all tried to convey what does it really feel like and break the silence, which a long ago colleague of ours used to use that term. And I don't think you can really convey it the way a movie can. And so I think it will be transformative when people watch this and it really, they feel it deeply and they can understand it, particularly folks who don't menstruate, because how could they understand?
So what IMPURE really is, it is an educational tool that we also want to implement into schools, either in the curriculum or through NGOs. We focus on classrooms, on communities, and on parliaments all around the world. This is the place where this film has to be seen at least once. We know from many test screenings and also educational screenings in schools, in Nepal, in Kenya, and elsewhere, that this movie truly leaves an impact.
This film must be seen by everyone. When I say everyone, I mean everyone. The state governments, I mean civil society, I mean development partners. And beyond that, it's something that has to be watched by family, mother, father, children, schools, teachers, very important. And from where I'm coming from, I would say that also by traditional leaders, by religious leaders, because all of us play a key role in this situation, because a lot of mothers, a lot of parents, a lot of caregivers do not have the courage to take girls through this, and we see it as a taboo. And it's good because it's then going to end the stigma.
We need to change the narrative, not just about how we view period across cultures, but also that we need to change the narrative in terms of how we think in the global north, pointing fingers to the global south. We can learn from the global south, and we need to acknowledge that all the problems that are very visible in the south are also happening in the global north. So we are very good in hiding this here in the north, but finally we need to acknowledge that period stigma, period poverty, that this is a universal issue and that we can only solve this together. the North and the South, by coming together and trying to find strategies and ways to end period stigma.
Imagine what would happen if these types of approaches were embedded in all schools around the world, and if children were taught about their bodies, were taught to respect their bodies, were taught that they own their bodies, and girls were properly supported with education and everything they need to manage their periods with dignity. If schools were safe and teachers encouraged children to respect each other, what would that world look like? And what would June's story look like in that world? That is the goal we work towards every day. We're so grateful to all of you here, especially the filmmakers, and especially June. How amazing was she for shining a light on this vital issue? We are proud to stand with you to ensure that all children, especially girls, can experience an education which is safe, inclusive, equal, and period friendly.
I believe in dignity first. Before we speak about the big concepts, before we speak about educational empowerment, economic empowerment, telling young girls to go to school, let's have the conversations about their bodies. And not only educating young girls, but also educating young boys as well around proper etiquette around these conversations. The shame comes from bringing it up and being made fun of in some of these situations. So how do we create an ecosystem where we recognize how we need to create a safe space where young girls can put up their hand and feel confident enough to speak up about when they're going through something, when they need access to hygiene products, making sure that it's available in bathrooms, you know? Because that's where it begins, making it easily accessible to young girls in schools, public areas, and that's how we remove the stigma and shame around it, yeah.
I would just tell my younger self, speak up. Speak up when you think you shouldn't. Speak up in the times that you think you can't, because there is a lot of fear and guilt associated with learning about periods. And what I would say to everyone trying to learn about periods is that it's not something that's out of the ordinary. This happens to all women, and this happens to so many people all over the world. And it is such a common bodily function for everyone. And periods are an inherent biomarker of your overall health. Periods have never been just about reproductive health. It's been an indicator of so many different things. If you're not having regular periods, you can have PCOS, endometriosis, even problems with infertility. Periods are linked with so many different overall health issues that you should know about. And there's such a complete picture that we can paint here if we learn more.
So, yeah. I'm super excited, I am super happy. It was an amazing screening. The audience was super diverse and enjoyed the premiere. We had a lot of amazing guests from the wash sector, from the filmmaking community, from the diplomatic community. It's a huge milestone, not just for us, for me as a filmmaker, for my team. It's also a milestone for menstrual equity. Now we need to use this momentum to move further, to keep up the conversation, and to spend every opportunity to make a difference.
So I feel like, period, end of sentence, it was so great to share a story about women banding together to make period products with a pad machine to destigmatize menstruation in the village. That's one story in India. Here we have another story somewhere across the world in Kenya. And yet, in countries like the United States, period poverty is alive and well, sadly. Period poverty exists all over the world, in countries rich and poor. And until we recognize that fact and band together to end period shame and stop period stigma, we are not going to take the world as far as we need to take the world. That means girls' access to education. That means girls' equal access in the workplace. And by sharing June's story in IMPURE, we uplift the story of women and girls everywhere.